everyone. I've been thinking recently that I may start doing the occasional video based on some of the psychology words or phrases, or even pop psychology words or phrases that end up in more of our popular vernacular that eventually come to mean something completely different, or they're being used in a context that is not at all what the terminology is actually referring to. And so today what I want to talk about is the pop psychology term gaslighting. I'm starting to hear more and more people come in and tell me, oh, they said I was wrong, but they were just gaslighting me. Or, their interpretation of the facts was different than mine, and so they were just gaslighting me. And in reality, that's not what gaslighting means. Gaslighting is not a disagreement of an interpretation of the facts. So a husband and a wife may get into an argument, and the person may say, well, if you hadn't gotten so angry at me, I wouldn't have gotten so defensive. That's an interpretation of the facts. Now, a wife might decide to fight back and say, well, you never listen to me unless you yell at you. Again, interpretation of the facts. Neither one of them is trying to convince the other one that they're crazy for thinking what they're thinking. They're looking at, objective facts that the two of them share, and they're looking at them from different angles, and both might be right or both might be wrong. But that, in that example, is a disagreement. That is not gaslighting. Now, the term gaslighting comes from a film from, I believe, the 1930s or the 1940s, during which the husband in the story is trying to convince his wife she's crazy so that he can have her committed to an asylum. And so he goes about this by starting to make her wonder about her perception of reality and what actually is going on around her. And so it's very insidious, it's very sneaky, and a lot of times people don't realize it's happening until it's actually occurred. So very rarely, like in my example, is it a husband and wife arguing over, why a certain behavior happened and what needs looked at to make it not happen again, or how do you justify it. This is much less obvious. And so generally, gaslighting will happen when there is a power dynamic within the relationship. So one individual holds more power than the other for whatever reason. So, sometimes it's an established dynamic if the gaslighting occurs in a friendship. And, they may have just always, one friend might have always had more power over the other their entire friendship. Or it can be in a work environment between someone who has more authority or more informal power than the other person. Or it can be in a relationship, in a marriage or a partnership, where for some reason one individual has taken all of the power out of the relationship and has put the other person in a position of trying to appease them all the time. And so if there isn't that power dynamic at play, then when you're having a discussion of something, you're having an argument. What will happen in gaslighting, if we go back to our couple, let's say, and we switch this to a gaslighting situation, then, the husband may say to the wife, well, I wouldn't get so mad if you weren't so miserable to me all the time. And the wife is thinking, but I'm not miserable to you all the time. I don't remember being miserable to you. I don't know how we got into this argument. And so she may say, well, I wasn't trying to be miserable. Did it feel like I was being miserable? And, the husband might say something like, well, you never think you're being miserable. You just always justify it by saying, you're tired or you're hungry, but you don't realize you're miserable all the time. And, if you think you aren't, you're just crazy. You make my life here miserable, and you just don't try hard enough, and you don't care about me, and if you don't get your act together, I'm leaving. And in that situation, the wife starts to wonder, well, maybe I am. Maybe I need to be better. I need to do better. Maybe my perception of reality is wrong here. Maybe I am actually being miserable and I'm just being oblivious to it. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm the cause of all of this anger that I'm receiving. And so that situation, that's gaslighting. Gaslighting is a pretty major form of psychological abuse and is very different than arguing. And the reason why often I'll clarify that for people is that when a terminology becomes applied to things that are widely different from what it actually is, or it becomes common to refer to certain things in that way, that term loses all its meaning. And so when you're talking to someone who's been psychologically abused and gaslit, when they're trying to explain what's happening to them, and maybe the word gaslighting comes up, someone who doesn't understand the term would be like, oh yeah, my boyfriend, he gaslights me all the time. Yesterday he said he wanted chicken, and then when I came home from work and I went to cook the chicken, he said, oh no, he'd rather have beef, or he wanted to know why I bought chicken. And I told him that he was just trying to make me think I was crazy. Well, those are vastly different situations, and it makes it hard for the person who's actually being gaslit to be able to explain what's happening to them. So hopefully this little bit of an explanation helps you tell the difference. Arguing is okay, disagreeing is okay, interpreting the facts differently is okay, but dictating the facts to another person and then ridiculing them if they don't agree with you, or threatening them, or anything along those lines to make them agree with your interpretation, that's gaslighting, and that's a problem.